This
You just-
conference will now be recorded.
You just need to know where your access points are here as well. So we are then, whoever's in the building and whoever's at home, if you'd like to take this time, we'll stand up and do a pledge. If you don't mind. That's fine. Rob's standing it up. Very good.
I'm looking for my flag.
All right. Well, you can always face the right direction.
Oh, here.
You ready? Hold it up. Good one, Rob. I pledge allegiance to the flag of America.
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And remain standing for a moment of silent prayer thereafter. Tonight, we're going to dedicate our moment of silent prayer to an icon of Ocean Township, a giant of a man, a legend, Mr. David DeRouge, who touched so many, many lives in so many positive ways for many, many years. So to his wife, Marie, and the family, our condolences, and we're thinking of you guys today. These terrible times, and it's a hard way really to try to mourn somebody, but we'll remember Dave forever. Thank you. We can all be seated. Okay. So the notice requirement of the Open Public Meeting Act for this meeting has been satisfied. We did that one already, did the fire drill. All cell phones are turned off. We're going to go right to our ordinance. Tonight we have two public hearings, right, Ben?
Mayor, we're going to start with the budget information. So the first thing is a public hearing on ordinance 2337.
Okay. So you want to
So I'll read that.
Yeah, read that in?
Yes, an ordinance establishing a cap bank for the year 2020 in accordance with the NJSA 40A:4-45.14. So we need a motion and a second to open the public hearing.
All right, somebody please make a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 2337. Okay, Rob, Margie, Rob.
I make a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 2337.
Second?
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council Members Achara,
Yes.
Conlon,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, and anybody wishing to be heard on, so we open the public hearing on ordinance number 2337, please.
Can you give an executive summary of what the cap bank for year 2020 is for us laypersons?
Sure. Ben, is Steve with us?
Mr. Gallagher?
Okay,
That's Steve.
the cap bank ordinance is basically an ordinance that we do every year. It does a couple of things. First off, it allows us to expand the percentage of what we can increase appropriations by from the prior year to the current year, from the percentage that is set by the state to the maximum of 3.5%. We don't necessarily need that portion of the ordinance, but the portion of the ordinance that we do need is the one that allows us to establish a cap bank in which the allowable increase in appropriations, okay, that we don't use is put into a bank by the state of New Jersey for use at a future time. That's the important part of the whole ordinance, and that's the reason why we do it. Our appropriations are generally under the state's cap limitation. But by doing this cap bank, we allow us to save for the future in case there's a time where we have an emergency where we would need to increase our appropriations. We could draw on that bank.
So this is like an accrual.
It's basically like a savings. That's what it is. It's not non-monetary. It just allows us to increase to use that in the future to cover appropriations in case
Tom Brackle's
we
on.
go over the limit.
Thank you.
That was a little out of order, public comment, so we're just getting to that portion now. So again, somebody open the public hearing and make a motion to open the public hearing for a comment.
You already did that, Mayor.
All right, we had seconds, we're good. So I
We're good.
presume our first question, anybody else in the audience wishing to be heard? State your name and address for the record.
Mayor, if I might, if you have any questions, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Are you hearing me, Ben, okay?
I'm hearing you fine, Mayor.
See, anybody, Ben?
Nobody, Mayor.
All right, somebody make a motion to close the public hearing on
I have a
ordinance 22.
Who's that?
Sorry, this is Gerald and Brenda, 617 Beechwood Avenue, in West Elmhurst.
What's-
Just curious about real estate and home showings and open houses. Has anything changed? Are there any restrictions?
Okay, this is just germane to this ordinance. Questions on this ordinance only. At the end of the meeting, we'll have time for public questions, okay? We'll get to
Okay.
that. Short.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry about that.
Anybody else on ordinance 2337? No? Someone make a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance 2337.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 2337.
I'll second.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. Margie, keep your dog quiet, Marge. Okay. So also,
Ronnie. Ronnie took him for a walk.
public hearing number 2. For municipal budget, we want to read the title?
Mayor, we need a motion and a second to adopt that ordinance.
Okay. Someone make a motion to adopt ordinance 2337.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2337 and publish according to law.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Now for public hearing number 2, this is on municipal budget. All right, Ben, you want to read the title?
It's all it is to authorize the 2020 municipal budget to be read by title.
Okay.
It's a resolution.
Offer that resolution.
I'll offer.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes.
Mayor, at this time, we're going to have Mr. Gallagher do a short presentation.
We're good. Turn it over.
Okay, this won't be the 45-minute normal presentation that I normally do. Basically, what I did was I condensed this down into 3 worksheets. And let's see here. Gotta share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Not yet.
No.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Now can you see that? There you
Yes.
go. Okay. Okay, so this first worksheet here is basically a summary of the 2020 budget. This compares 2020 to 2019. Shows surplus. We're using this for 2020 as 7,210,000. And total miscellaneous revenues are 8,240,542.79. Receipts from delinquent taxes of $1 million, and local taxes for municipal purposes of 22,307,536.85. So total general revenues of 38,755,079.64. For the appropriation side, we have the operating expenses, salary and wages of 15,571,238. Other expenses of 10,983,975.87. We have deferred charges and other appropriations outside of caps of $3,683,008.
Hey, Steve,
Capital
can you slide
yes.
that down a little?
I'm sorry?
Slide it down. You can't. There you go.
You see that? Okay.
Keep going.
Capital improvements, and this is the down payment money that we use for our bonding ordinances of $400,000. Debt service, we only have 3 permanent financing bonds outstanding at this moment. That total debt service is $3,657,853,000. And then our reserve for uncollected taxes, and anybody who's not familiar with that particular appropriation, the township collects taxes for not only the municipality, but for the school district, as well as the county and our special districts, the fire district 1 and 2. We collect all their taxes. Now, by law, we have to remit to the school 100% of those taxes, regardless of whether we collect them or not. So what this appropriation does is it covers us in the need that, in the event that we need to pay 100% to the various agencies that we collect for, and we don't receive as much in actual revenue. So we're fully covered in making that 100% payment to those various agencies. And that brings us down to the total of the general appropriations of $38,755,079.64, which agrees with our revenues, which is what it's supposed to be, since by law we have to have a balanced budget. So the bottom screen here is our estimated tax rate, okay? So for 2020, our municipal tax rate is going to be 0.404 cents, okay? Which is a tenth of a penny down from last year's rate of 0.405. Open space stays the same at a penny. That doesn't change. The school, the county, and are estimated. We don't know what their levy is going to come in at. I generally take 2% of the previous year's tax levy as a guesstimate. So those rates are subject to change. And the fire districts, we have their actual taxes, and their combined effect on the overall tax rate is about 6.3 cents, as you see there. Okay, so the overall tax rate, and it really kind of changes depending on which fire district you're in, is going to be around $2 and 5/10 of a penny there. Okay, so overall the rate has dropped, and that's because we've had more properties come online and things like that. The next worksheet that I have here are some of the major drivers of the budget appropriations. Debt service, that's a big one. Recycling disposal fees, we used to get money for our recyclables. As of the middle of last year, we started to have to pay. our recycling is not being purchased by overseas entities anymore. And that's causing us to have to actually pay for the disposal of those recycling. Contractual wage increases, that's about a $200,000 increase. It works up to be about around 1% overall. And then, of course, the police and fire pension system, that's about a $100,000 increase there. Okay. In the budget document for 2020, the state has added in this little thing here. It kind of gives you a glance as to what's happening with taxes. And for example, if your assessment is $225,000 from last year to this year, this is the total tax you're estimated at paying for 2020, and this is the local portion of it. And over on the right column here, you can see the total tax change and the local portion of that. Okay, so this schedule is on our website with the introduced budget, and it'll be on there for our adopted budget as well. But you can see the impact that tenth of a penny has on property values. Okay, and that's basically what I have here for the 2020 budget.
So Steve,
Yes.
on an average assessed home right now, we're going to use let's use the 500 as that mark.
I'm sorry?
Let's use the 500 as the average assessed home,
Right.
and the local tax was and what it will be. So it's a modest change of about $4 for a local tax for the year. Right.
A little bit on the, if you're assessed at $500,000 for last year and this year, you're going to see a $4 decrease.
Okay. It's a good thing. Great.
Okay.
Are you going to open up the public comments?
Well,
Yes,
if you have,
Mayor, you need to open up the public hearing now on the budget.
right, so I'll do that. So let's open the public hearing on our 2020 municipal budget. Someone please make a motion to open. Margie? Johnny? Somebody?
I motion to open the public hearing on our budget.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council Members Achara,
Yes.
Conlon,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. At this time, anybody from the public have any questions on the 2020 municipal budget? Please state your name and
Yes,
address.
I do. Stephen Felton, 294 Roosevelt Avenue, Oakhurst. Regarding recycling and the costs, maybe you do or do not know on the screen here of all the people I see. The reason this is all happening is because China is refusing recycled materials from the US. And my question is, why are we bothering with recycling at this point? Are there centers taking it and actually recycling it? Or are we just fooling each other and we could all just throw it into one can and we're going to pay the same tonnage fee at the dump?
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Musillo answer that question if he's here, but we do have an agreement with a local plant up in Tinton Falls that does do our recycling, so that's coming up. Mike, do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. We're required by law to recycle, first of all. In January of this year, we switched our recycling contract to Mazza Recycling in Tinton Falls, who actually gave us a better rate on our recyclables. And as of this summer, they're supposed to start building their own recycling plant, which is supposed to drop our rate a little bit more. But being with all the slowdowns and whatnot from the virus, that might have to be pushed out a little bit with their construction. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, this is Jim Bay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jim Bay, a telephonic call in. Steve, I was looking at the page 7. Reserve for uncollected taxes, 4,459,004.
Uh-huh.
On March 13th, I sent you an email, and I asked regarding that reserve for uncollected taxes, should it be prorated between the county and school and the municipality? Should that reserve of $4 million be about 20% for the municipal, 20% for the county, and about 60% for the school? So that number, instead of $4 million, should be about $1,119,000, $1,193,000 instead of $4 million.
No, the thing is that the reserve for uncollected taxes is calculated based on the amount of total taxes that we're expected to pay out. Okay, we are the collecting authority for all of those taxes. Therefore, we have to remit those taxes. We collect the money and then remit them to the different agencies. We have to pay 100%. Okay, so it's going to be 100% of what the school is entitled to, 100% of what the county is entitled to, and 100% of what the fire districts are entitled to. We have no.
Steve, do you still have that email I sent you?
I don't recall.
Okay, very good.
It's been kind of a little bit crazy around here, as you can understand.
The March 13th email had an addendum on it, and it was referencing sheet A1, A2 of the current fund. And on the current fund, on line down near the bottom of that, A2, A9, $21,323,000 was collected for taxes that year.
Okay.
But you actually realized $24,264,000. So you're realizing the money that was for the school and for the county.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't just have the $1,193,000. You had it plus the additional $3 million that was for the school and the county on that line on sheet 1 of A2.
Sheet 1 on line A2, you're talking about the annual financial statement, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay. I think sheet 11 is what you're talking about, right? That's where the recap of the revenues, or not, what is it, 17, I think it is. But anyway,
in the current fund, fund.
The thing is that the actual tax collections are taken net after the school and the county and the fire districts have been paid.
But the result is that the municipality gets $3.5 million more.
Yeah,
than
I mean, it's designed for that.
So the amount raised by taxes, $22,304,536.85. Will actually the amount raised for taxes will be $25,800,000.
No, the amount is in the budget is 22 million.
But then at the end of the year, once you put that line down there, A2, A9 on the current fund, it's plus $3.5 million.
This year it is, or last year it was.
So you're not collecting 22 million, you're collecting 25.8.
It depends on what we actually collect in taxes.
Jim,
but you're not prorating it 20% to the municipality, 20% to the county, and 60% to the school. You're taking 100% of that $4 million and giving 100% of it to the municipality.
No, we collect the $4 million in reserve for uncollected taxes. If we were to collect 100%, you know, we'd have the whole $4 million bucks. Well, we don't collect 100%. You know, our tax collection rate is around 98.5. All right. So, you know, we're having to pay the school and everybody else 100%. Now, we don't calculate our reserve for uncollected taxes at 98.5. We calculate it at a rate a little lower than that because, you know, sometimes we've dipped into the 97% area. You know, it's not often, but sometimes we do. So we want to make sure there's enough room in there to cover for that contingency. Anything that we have extra, then that goes into surplus, which we use to support the budget in the following year.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does backfeed into, okay, I'll come into your office and talk to you about this one. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Mayor Ciliano, thank you very much.
You're welcome, anytime. Anybody else questions on 2020 municipal budget?
Yeah, this is Peter Young, 610 Deal Road.
Mayor, if I might ask, anybody that's on a phone, if they can please mute the phone, it's getting very difficult to hear.
Okay, yeah, all the
Much better.
This is Peter Young, 610 Deal Road. I'm not on the phone. And I just had a few questions. Could you remind me, Mr. Gallagher does the budget every year for the township?
Yes.
And would you say there's some sort of trend here? It looks like you're increasing the budget $1 million this year. Would you say that the budget is going from 37,751 million to 38,755? That's a $1 million increase.
Mr. Gallagher, you're muted.
Okay, you're saying that okay. So yeah, the budget's going from 37,751 to 38,755.
And these forecasts on revenues are just really historical. You haven't at all contemplated that your revenues may drop with the current emergency situation?
Well, the way we construct the budget is that we're very conservative on the amount of revenues we anticipate, and we are somewhat aggressive on the appropriations that we raise, as well as being very conservative in the amount that we use for the reserve for uncollected taxes. So, for instance, UCC fees. We typically anticipate about $500,000 for those fees as revenue. Now, the past couple of years, we've seen revenues actually come in at $800,000 or $900,000, well exceeding the amount that we budgeted. This is because of the building that's been going on. We've had some developments in town, as you well know. And at the end of the day, we didn't jump our appropriations to match those revenues because at any time we could lose out on those revenues. So we want to make sure that we have enough to support the budget, but we don't want to sit there and cut ourselves too thin. So it's been a policy of the governing body that we maintain a conservative type budget to provide for contingencies like what we're going through now.
My question is, this is a growth budget that's based on historical, you know, but have we contemplated a budget where your revenues drop under the current emergency situation? Why would you pass a budget based on concepts from last year?
Well, I'm not necessarily understanding your question. I mean, the thing is that just because the dollar amount of the budget went up $1 million doesn't mean that we're actually spending things on growth. I mean, we have, I told you that the drivers of the budget, for instance, were debt service and the recycling taxes. Those are the two major ones, all right? I mean, we went from essentially we were getting maybe a 100,000 or a little more in revenues for recycling. Now we're paying $350,000. So you got a $450,000, $500,000 swing just there alone. We've done a lot of projects in town, a lot of paving, a lot of improvements to open space and things like that. Those those monies generate increases in debt service. So the thing is, those things have to be paid. We don't have any choice. There's no discretion. All right. So as far as that goes, we have no real handle on that stuff. The revenues have to match the appropriations. We're required by law to have a balanced budget. Now, some of them are coming from different sources. The thing is that we have to balance it. Now, when we do the budget, we're very conservative, and we're going to continue to be conservative because you have to have some wiggle room in case of emergencies. We don't appropriate every revenue that we get. We don't max them out. Okay, we are very conservative about doing that.
My concern is that your forecast is based on historical trends and not on the extraordinary situation today. What do you do if revenues drop over the next 6 months?
What did I just say? I said that we don't budget the maximum amount of revenues we usually get, okay? And I gave you the example of the UCC fees where we anticipate 500 in the budget and we're actually getting a lot more. So if we don't get, if we're actually, or last year we got 900,000, we only budgeted 500,000. So we've got 400,000 cushion there in case we don't collect that.
Okay, that's a good explanation. What about the 3.9 million in debt? Is there any way to retire that this year under the current, sort of changes in the market? Can you retire that $3 million debt so we don't have to carry that year in, year out?
Well, how high would you like the tax rate to go? I mean, because if we go and retire debt, that means we have to raise taxes to pay it. So if you want to retire debt, well, I mean, that's fine. That's a policy decision by the governing body. But at the end of the day, okay, you got to come up with the money. You can't retire debt without the money. All right, we've got 3 bonds outstanding. One was from 2007 that will be retiring in 2025. We did one in 2014 that'll be retiring in 2029, and we just did one last year which will be retiring in 2035. Okay, so the thing is that we did those bond sales so that we could level out the debt and provide a level debt service so that the taxpayer is not overly affected by debt service.
We're going to retire that 3.9 million and not enter into any new debt service.
Well, the thing is that debt service covers ordinances and projects that we've already done. So if you want to say, okay, we won't pave another road in town, if you want to say we're not going to do any more improvements to parks or open space, okay, you don't have to have any debt. But the thing is that we do have projects. We do have vehicles that need to be repaired or replaced. We do have projects that need to be done and roads to be paved. So debt service is always going to be part of the equation. The way we manage it, and we've usually done it this way, is we try to avoid going to bonding if necessary. We've been having, like I said, we're a conservative type of operation. And one of the things that we do is we tend to try and schedule our debt so that we're paying off 1/10 of it a year. That's and fund it through bond anticipation notes. Sometimes at some point you're going to have more in notes and it becomes unwieldy to go out to finance those on a short-term basis. That's when we go to bonding.
Those are good answers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mayor, we have Don Brockle who has a question.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. Don Brockle, 710 Laurel Avenue. As you might see, I have some scouts here. Hopefully they open their screen up so you can see them. I got 5 scouts taking, some of them taking communication notepad, and also citizenship and community. So they're here listening, taking notes. So just want you to know that. I do have a question for Steve. I didn't realize that the reserve for uncollected taxes is 4, but does that usually turn into surplus the next year? What's the history of that, Steve?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what happens with it.
Okay.
You know, what we don't use this year, okay, as far as payments to the school and the county, that goes into the surplus for the next year.
Okay, great. And the other question was, and I was a little confused by looking at it, but I figured it out. And it can't be right soon, but they're looking at 2020 budget. Hey, we're already in 2020. We're 4 months into it. So
Yes, we are.
Are we a little late? And the answer, I think, is where the tax year starts in July, right? 1 July?
Now, here's historically, it's always been this way. The state of New Jersey, for those of you who may not know this, is probably puts the most financial regulation on municipalities of any state in the United States, aside from Oregon. They're just about as regulated as we are. Now, this came about because in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, New Jersey committed to making sure that municipalities would never go bankrupt, because, you know, during the 30s, a lot of cities and towns went bankrupt. So what they did was they went and they forced financial regulations on the towns, and one of which is the budget laws. Okay. Now, in our town, we have a very structured budget process. So we started in September. We're required by law to have our a budget hearing in November, which we do usually around the 3rd week of November. And then we're required to turn over the budget in January to the governing body. The governing body then reviews it, tells me my numbers are all wrong, and makes me go back and do it again. I come up with a number that they can live with, and that covers our needs and everything like that. And then we're required to introduce under the law in February. Now, the division has given us extensions every year now for as long as I can remember, so that we can introduce in March and adopt in April, which is typically what we do to comply with the directives from the Division of Local Government Services. Now, this year, because of the COVID-19 crisis, they've actually extended that even further into May, but we were all ready to go. So it's like, why hold up progress? We need an operating budget. Our temporary budget lines are getting thin, and we already, you know, we're ready to rock. So we're doing ours now.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for the information, and it's good seeing everybody. Stay healthy.
But I got on my phone. No other questions, but Mayor, again, anybody who is on via a phone call, you must mute your phone because we're getting too much feedback. So please, if you're on via a phone call, mute your telephone. Thank you.
On the budget.
No other questions that I have, Mayor.
We'll make a motion to close the public
Mayor, I have
hearing.
a question.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Tom Kreitler, 304 Roosevelt. Steve, I think you mentioned in your presentation that you had additional properties coming on board, and that was going to help your budget. I was wondering how you manage the assessed value of the homes going up and going down. We've all seen our assessment going up quite dramatically in the last 3 years. I know that our home went up over $100,000. Now that we're going to, I predict, be seeing a softer market as we come out of COVID, that's going to have an impact on your tax collections as well. So how do you manage that from year to year to be able to keep the budget balanced?
Okay, the nice thing about what we have with the Monmouth County Assessment Demonstration Program is it allows the assessor to respond to market conditions. So in a rising market, he's able to target which neighborhoods are seeing increases in value. And the whole objective behind the ADP is to keep all the properties at market value. That's the objective. So the assessment demonstration program allows us to be responsive to market conditions. So if the market softens up because of this, we'll be able to respond in kind. You live over by Roosevelt, and the Oakhurst area used to be kind of tepid as far as market conditions go, and that's changed over the past year or two, where it's really started to become quite the active market. And we've had that in several of the areas to the east of Monmouth Road as well. But that's how we work it. Matter of fact, we go in and we inspect a portion of the properties every year just to make sure that our records are correct as far as the data that is used to determine the assessments. We do 20% per year, and that should be starting up as soon as the state clears us for open for business again. As far as revenues and whatnot, like I said before, we tend to have a very conservative budget. We don't anticipate to the full hilt of what we received in the prior year. We have a conservative reserve for uncollected taxes. So we have, we try to keep a budget so that we can regenerate surplus and use that to support the budget in the future year.
So then if our assessments have gone up in the last 2 or 3 years, and if the market softens, would you, with this 20%, hope to reduce those assessments, or is it up to us to file an appeal?
You don't have to file an appeal. What's going to happen is that the assessor is looking at market conditions roughly around October of what they call the pre-tax year. So October of this year is when he submits his book for 2021 with the property valuations, and he's using his market data, which includes sales and statistical modeling, to determine how the market is doing. So if he sees a softening, you're going to see that in your assessed valuation for next year.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Stephen.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ben?
None, Mayor.
I just want to be very careful, Mayor Chris. I think Steve.
Identify yourself.
I think like Steve is excellent in his explanation. But I would just say, like, if this concludes the hearing and you're moving on to the adoption, I would just say that I think maybe you want to take advantage of the state offering not to adopt until next month and not rush anything, because there's so many unknowns right now.
Well, let me just address that, because if we were to go in and amend the budget, then what we have to do is we have to do a resolution, and depending on the size and the scope of the changes to the budget, it requires another introduction and a hearing and whatnot. So the thing is that then would constrain us to adopting a budget probably later than May. It'd be June or something like that. We just can't operate like that. We've got the numbers, we've got a direction, we've got the policies been set by the governing body. To wait any longer isn't practical.
So if you're confident as a governing body, then you will make your adoption tonight. But, you know, I still feel very uncomfortable where this country is going.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think as Steve has mentioned, we have a conservative budget. I don't anticipate a situation that's average. We do. I'm afraid if we went longer, you won't like the adjustments we'll have to make. I would say ride this one. You know, let's take what we have. I think it's a responsible, reasonable budget. Constraints.
Let me just parrot what Chris just said. I agree with him. You know, one of the things that pushing off the budget and analyzing it further might be that we reduce the amount of revenues that we're anticipating, which would raise the amount of taxes to be raised. And I really don't think we want to do that either.
I didn't want to give you that, Steve.
Listen, if you believe that's a responsible thing to do, then vote tonight.
My 18th budget, I'm really comfortable with how we have it laid out. But thank you, Peter. Good stuff. Anybody else?
No, Mayor.
Lynn?
Nothing,
Okay.
Mayor.
Someone please motion to close the public hearing on the 2020 municipal budget.
Motion to close the hearing on the public hearing on the municipal budget.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. Action, please, on the 2020 municipal budget.
Mayor, there's a resolution I need to read, please, before we take action. Be resolved by the council members of the Township of Ocean, County of Monmouth, that the budget presented shall be adopted and constitute an appropriation for the purposes stated as set forth. Total amount to be raised by taxation for municipal purposes, $22,304,536.85. Total revenues, $38,755,079.64. Total appropriations, $38,755,079.64. It is hereby certified that the within budget, finally adopted by resolution of the governing body on the 23rd day of April 2000. It is further certified that each item of revenue and appropriations as set forth in the same amount and by the same title as appeared in the 2020 approved budget. Now you motion in a second, Mayor.
All right, so we have a motion to adopt the 2020 budget.
No, not yet. Oh, we need, sorry. Heard you wrong.
Please,
Offer a motion to adopt the 2020 budget, municipal budget.
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
After 4 years of watching Steve's budget, once again, Steve, you've done a great job. I appreciate all the hard work. And now I truly understand why you budget the way you do, especially at times like this. So I vote yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
yes, before Steve changes his mind.
Good.
All right. The 2020 budget has been adopted and approved. Thank you. At this time, let me get into our comments. Well, let me just read this. The purpose of the public portion solely as closest understand resolutions that appear on agenda, not the occasion for a public hearing on an ordinance. All questions asked during the public comments portion conclusion. So still, if you have something public at the end of the meeting, when we're all through, that's when we'll open it up to you. So right now, we're going to go for a consent agenda and our resolutions 2058 through 2084. Does anybody have any questions on that? If you have any questions on these items, please state your name.
We haven't heard what you said yet.
Okay, so, one of you, sir?
No, I just haven't heard the numbers. There's these people on their phones at the bottom here. They're all talking. You can see they're talking, but try again, Mr. Mayor. No.
Mayor, you're breaking up, so let me try. You're breaking up. The purpose of this public portion is to ask questions and understand resolutions on the consent agenda or the individual action resolution. It's not a time to ask questions on the public hearing of any ordinance. So if you have any questions on resolutions 20058, 20082 through 20086, now would be the time to ask those questions.
Thank you.
So what are we doing with 20058? What is the settlement agreement? Has that been shared with us? Is it posted on the town website?
Yes, it is.
Could you provide some sort of quick summary in 15 seconds?
Mayor, they'd like a summary of resolution 058.
So,
We also have online Mary Beth Lonigan and Nancy Hahn.
okay, so
Can
let
I-
me, yeah, Marty.
Would it make sense to hold that until we have the ordinance at the same time? So perhaps discuss both of them together. Can we do that, Vinnie?
Yes, we can. We can pull 058 till we get to the ordinance.
Okay, let's do that. Peter. All right. Anybody have
Can you
questions?
also pull 20082?
I don't know.
I might have to dial in, like Rob suggested.
You're breaking up, Mayor.
Yeah, it'd be easier, Chris.
Mayor, just for the good of the order, can I just make a suggestion as the broadcaster in the room? What's happening here is the loudest person is taking command of the audio feed. And so you'll notice that if you're farther away from the mic and you're quiet, that's when that attendant 31 pipes in and squashes you. So if you're speaking, you got to be right on top of the mic in order to have it transmit. And the second thing is that, Vinnie, if you're the organizer, I think there's controls in GoToMeeting where you can mute everybody.
I can mute everybody, Mr. Crowler, but if I mute everybody, I'm also muting the people who are speaking.
Now, maybe we can raise our hand or put a note in the chat. Just a suggestion.
Let's see if we can get everybody, again, if you're not speaking, if everybody who is not speaking, if you can mute yourself, that would certainly be helpful. Again, if you're not speaking, mute yourself.
Okay, how am I sounding now, Ben?
Better, Mayor.
Any other questions on the resolutions mentioned other than 2058?
Yes, I would also suggest that you postpone any adoption of 20-082.
We're not going to do that. That's a developer's agreement for the Greek church that's been in process for a while. The building's built and some extra stuff over there. So they've had their public hearing. They've gone through the process. There's no reason to delay that at all. We're not delaying it.
Are we building now?
What is extra stuff?
Marty, Vinnie, comment on their developer's agreement for the Greek church. It's probably something already that we're tightening up. Marty?
Mr. Orvis.
I gotta unmute myself. The Greek church, the resolution, I believe is for something they've already been working on. And now this is, what do you call it, for the, to install certain improvements under the performance guarantees. But I think they're minor things. They've already had most of their approvals done. And this was a $12,000 to $13,000 item that we're talking about. And it's already gone through some review. And frankly, there's no reason to postpone.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Okay, Ben, nobody else?
Nothing else, Mayor.
please offer the resolutions as
I
stated.
still have a question on resolution 20-085 on the wildlife management.
You have got to state your name and address. You can't just
Peter
forge it.
Young, 10 Deal Road, 20-085, the wildlife management. Is the township governing body adopting that?
Would you like me to answer that, Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Okay. We do this every year. We do an agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture for wildlife management, for geese management.
Got it, Peter? That's for our geese management.
And what are we doing exactly?
We do egg addling.
Addle the eggs so they don't try to reproduce as little as possible, so we don't have so much geese waste in our public areas and around the lakes and golf course.
Mayor Don Brockle, I just want to mention that they're out there right now on Deal Lake doing their job, so they're doing a great job. Just want to mention that.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
damaging the nest and destroying the eggs?
No.
As I recall, they do not destroy the eggs. They do a process, whether oiling or another process, but they do not destroy the eggs.
And someone had told me, you know, the male protects the female, and it's a very beautiful process. Then you see all the little drops. I mean, I understand some people's lawns can, you know, have a problem with it, but there are other ways to scare them away without destroying their nest and
There is.
babies.
You're 100% correct, but a lot of times there's at least 8, 9 active nests right now on Deal Lake, and they're getting oiled. You know, we're starting to try process where we're coating the ground with some grape type juice, and actually in Colonial Terrace it's working like a charm. But not every town does that, and the geese go where they want. They fly where they want, and they've been very heavy this year in concentration along the lake. But you got to control them. For every 4 geese, their excrement is providing enough phosphorus that equals a typical cesspool in a house. We don't have that situation in Ocean Township, but it's equal to that. It's a lot of phosphorus being pumped into the lake, so you need to control that.
Because what about some kind of flag? I mean, I see on some people's lawns, they put these shadows of a dog or something to keep them off their lawn. There isn't any other way. It just seems so barbaric to just destroy these because the geese look so proud of their little findings, you know.
And I'll be honest with you, you're exactly right, and that's why they don't destroy the eggs. The eggs are there, they sit on them, they don't hatch, and they go off. If you destroy the eggs, the female will relay another set of eggs. So they actually do not destroy the eggs, but the eggs do not hatch. That is correct.
Okay, Mayor?
Is there any other wildlife that we're controlling under this agreement?
Not right now.
You're muted, Jackie.
So if we were going to include other wildlife, we would have another meeting about it?
Yeah, this is only the geese.
Okay.
No other questions, Mayor? Mayor?
I don't see him on here.
I know, I don't know if we lost the mayor. Okay.
Send out the police to go get him.
Yeah.
The geese, please?
It could be a wild goose chase. Ooh, ouch.
Okay.
Kind of like an Argus comment.
It's not the first goose chase we've been on.
All right. We knew this was going to happen. Mayor, let's see.
Did
Let's
John
see.
just ask?
Mayor calling in.
All right, Mayor. Mayor, there are no other questions on the resolutions.
All right, someone please close the public hearing on the resolution.
Just need a motion and a second on the consent agenda, Mayor.
All right, somebody please offer the consent agenda.
I'll offer the consent agenda.
Second.
Need a second.
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 Okay. Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmember Chichera,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. So we have the vouchers also, Ben, I'm looking, right?
Yes, the vouchers were paid previously, and these are just memorializing them. So we would need a motion and a second to accept them.
All right, so we need a motion to accept the vouchers in the amount of $7,279,776.78 paid on April 9th. Somebody please offer.
I'll offer.
Second.
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmember Chichera,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, and I see individual action. We already handled, I guess, 2085.
Well, it still needs to be voted on, Mayor.
So 2085, authorize the township manager to execute an agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture for wildlife management services for the period of February 1 through September 30, 2020, at a cost not to exceed $2,519. Someone please offer.
I'll offer.
Second.
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmember Chichera,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, and for individual action 2086, approve the renewal of a contract with Delta Dental for the flagship plan effective May 1st, 2020. Someone please offer.
I'll offer.
Second.
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmember Chichera,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, okay. Now for our ordinances.
Mayor, before we move on, Mr. William Clark of 24 Phoenix Parkway asked about the geese as referenced in Resolution 085. How many would you say removed versus moved in?
Don Brockle, please.
Well, we'll probably eliminate, if it's about 5 eggs per nest, you're probably talking over 35 to 40 geese that will not be walking our streets and swimming around the lake. So it's quite a bit. So quite a bit.
Mr. Brockle's our chairman of the Deal Lake Commission, by the way. It's why he's answering.
Hi, Mayor, that's it.
That's it? Okay. For adoption tonight, we have 3 ordinances. The first one's going to have a little discussion. Ordinance 2334A. Ben, would you read the title, please?
Sure. An ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 21 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Ocean entitled Land Development Ordinance to address the Roosevelt Avenue inclusionary zone.
Okay, someone please open the public hearing on ordinance 2334A.
I'll offer to open the public hearing on ordinance 2320A.
34A.
34A, sorry.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmember Chichera,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. I'll add that we're going to open a public hearing on this. We'll also have to discuss the resolution 085 as well. We can do them both right after we do the ordinance. We can do the resolution. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. Any questions, folks? Now's the time to ask.
Before we open it up to the questions from the public, we did get a written list of questions And I see he's on, but Stephen Felton had sent a list of some questions, so I was going to read those and provide answers to those. I'm going to do it to the music that's playing in the background, but the first is, what is to keep the units from becoming rentals for students and again as rentals for summertime people during the year? There are actually two answers to that question. As it relates to the affordable units, those will be year-round rentals. They have to be the principal residence of the income qualified household, so there's no issue as to them. As to the market rate units, they're going to be like any other property in Ocean. We don't control whether it's owned or rented and who the potential renters are. So it's not like, it's like every other piece of property. Next question, what are the town ordinances regarding Airbnb and this development? The Airbnb is prohibited throughout the town. You can't have a rental. I believe the term is for less than 30 days. So there are no Airbnbs allowed throughout the municipality. 3, what is to keep the development from becoming a fraternity row with students' properties? Once again, it's no different than any other property in town. Anyone can purchase a piece of property, although it's unlikely that the brand new townhouses would be purchased by fraternities, but they could, I guess. Number 4, will the town maintain the roads, assuming the roads are deeded over, or will this be a completely private property community? Like many other of the developments in town, these roads are private roads. They're not built in accordance with public standards, and they will continue to be private roads. Number 5, are community pools allowed in this ordinance? I don't believe there's anything in the ordinance allowing a community pool. It's not on the plan. Plus the property, you'd have to lose units in order to put a pool in there, and they'd have to build it probably in a flood zone. So I don't think there's a potential for community pools. 6, what will be the use of Pine Street, which according to the street sign is the end of Larchwood to the south of Roosevelt Avenue? Streets are going to be used the same way they're used now. While we can limit parking if required after the development, those limitations would be the same for other residents. There is no access to this development by vehicles from Pine Street, and that's pretty much the primary answer. No access. In addition, in the settlement agreement, they can't use Pine Street to park construction vehicles.
So is there going to be is the dead end sign going to remain? This is Stephen Felton, 294 Roosevelt.
I assume the only access that's going to be permitted to this site across vehicular access across Pine Street would be emergency access. So there would be no reason to remove the dead end sign. Development standards, paragraph S, with such a minimum of parking available for each unit, basically 2 cars. Frankly, the parking that's on this development actually exceeds the requirements both from the ordinance and from RESIS, which is the design standards. So, there's, I think, 2 spots for each property, at least 2 spots, and in addition, there's excess parking. So frankly, they exceed the parking. So we're hoping that on a regular basis, parking will not be an issue. Who will determine the quantity of off-street parking spaces required within the development? That is set by the ordinance and RESIS parking requirements. What will keep the overflow off of Pine Street and or Roosevelt Avenue should the on-site overflow fill up? Again, just like any other house in the area, there's nothing that would prevent people from parking wherever there's legal parking, if that does happen. Are curbs to be the standard 6 by 8 height or lower rollover curbs where cars can park on the grass and road? I'm not exactly sure where you're talking about. Certainly there'll be no access along Pine Street if you were talking about that, but there will be no, I don't think that any parking on grass will be allowed. Will there be a school bus stop on property, or will school buses sit on Roosevelt Avenue for the several minutes while the children make it onto the bus? It's a good question, but that's going to be up to the school board and not to the township. And I'm not sure what they do in other developments right now. Number 9, will trash be picked up by the town at each residence or a common private dumpster situation? It's my understanding that the trash will be picked up by the town along, and I think that's what we do in the other developments by each of the properties, just like everyone else in a private house rolls it out for the garbage trucks. Next, development standard. Where is the solid fence to be placed within the setback? The plan does show a fence at the property line, so that's where the fence is supposed to be. Next, will these questions be read at the meeting? I think the answer is probably yes, since I just read. Will I need to be at the meeting? You're here, so thank you for coming. And our development plans available online? And the answer, the only plan we have is an overall plan. The actual detailed development plans will be submitted to the planning board. So hopefully, Stephen, I've answered at least the questions that you've asked so far.
Yeah, so the reason I asked about the curb question is I know several people that live in these little tight developments with the 20-foot wide roads, and if they all have rollover curbs designed on their roads versus, you know, a 6-inch or 8-inch curb. And so you end up with cars half on the road, half in the grass. So that was my question about this may be a little fussy, but that detail of the curb can create partial parking, road and grass versus an 8-inch curb, which is not going to let a car go up and do grass and road. I mean, you look, I actually have a plan. I won't mention where I got it from. It arrived at my house moments before this meeting started. So, I mean, that's why I brought that curb question up is, you know.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's not in the ordinance, and I don't know if it is.
Yeah,
I directed the same questions that you gave me or gave to whoever you initially gave them to. I sent out to everybody on the thing, and the answer that I got was, I'm trying to find it. It went back to parking as opposed to the curb.
Parking on the grass and curb, yeah. That's okay.
And parking. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not quite sure of the answer on the curb. If it's not in the ordinance itself, it'll be something that'll be established at the planning board hearings.
Yeah, okay, we can work on that then. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
I guess the question is now, are there any questions?
Yeah, Peter Yunkin, 610 Deal Road. I have like kind of a question. Like, you always look back at, you know, all the, you know, planning board and the master plan from 1991 and everything complies. I sometimes think this density that you're saying you comply with is really the wrong density going forward. I would be very concerned to have so many more people living on Roosevelt Avenue. I don't think it's forward looking, and I haven't yet heard from the mayor where we are with getting the master plan updated.
First of all, let me just respond, as we've told you many times, the 1991 master plan has been updated 3 or 4 times, and those are all amendments to the master plan. So they have been amended. My recollection is the next amendment to the master plan, which will still show the 1991 plan with new amendments, will probably be later this year. And it's done every 10 years, I believe. And so that is up to date. The next question is, you know, is this overdevelopment for this site? You know, we can argue that. However, this site is out of our control somewhat. It's under COA, and that changes everything, both in terms of the master plan if it was not consistent, but this is a COA application, part of our COA obligation, and that means we're obligated, and we've been certainly pressed by the judge to finalize this thing because we've been going at this for many years, and you know, that's part of this process. So, you know, is it something that some other people in the town would like to see not happen? You're probably right, but it's something that we're obligated to do under the COA regulations, and one of the aspects of the our COA settlement, which, by the way, just for, you know, we had an obligation, and we do have our COA attorney, and we also have our planner, I think, still here, but the bottom line is we were obligated initially to build like 1,100 units. We got that down to 240 or 50 something. We got extra credit from that number for some rentals and other types of homes that we had. So we've actually reduced the number substantially over the course of time, but we're still obligated to build those units. And this, it represents a small number, but a number of those units. So that's what we're obligated to do.
Marty, I appreciate how complicated this is, and I appreciate all the efforts of you and the governing body. But the result of some of these actions where you pass these ordinances, they then become a reality. And under the current situation, I think you should just move it to next month.
Well, frankly, while I may agree with you, Peter, because I wanted to try to move this until we had regular meetings, the court did not agree and obligated us to go this way. And so that's what we're doing.
Jackie, I have a question.
Has the environmental resource inventory been incorporated into our master plan yet? And will this new development be in conflict with that? Have we, you know, in terms of the tree removal, the environmental impact, has that been incorporated into our master plan yet in consideration of this new development moving forward?
I don't believe that has been addressed in this new development. I will say that the property owner here, I believe, has over 10 acres and basically a little over 2 acres are being developed. So the balance of the property, which is in a flood zone, is not being developed. So that will remain whatever it is now, treed and not disturbed. But I don't really know the answer on the other point.
That I know once that was really completed the end of the summer, and people have said to me, was that a consideration when we were talking about the other project that is, you know, on the corner of Deal Road and 35? It would have perhaps swayed the planning board differently had the environmental resource inventory been implemented into our master plan at that time. So I'd like to ask if there's some kind of plan, or could we move that along pretty quickly to get it incorporated, even if the whole master plan is not completely redeveloped, but that the environmental resource inventory is considered and applied to it where it's applicable.
Yeah, I believe that plan will be addressed as part of the overall amendments to the master plan, which I think are scheduled for October or November. So that's where it'll be placed. But how it impacts this particular development, well, I don't think it does. I really don't know the answer. But it won't matter very much because we're obligated to get this done.
Okay.
No, this is the Roosevelt Avenue development.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The other ordinances are 2335 and 2336, which I think are more minor than 2334A, which is really dense.
Hey, Marty, it's
Mayor.
Bob. I have a question for you if I can.
Yes.
All right, so you have the ordinance out?
Unfortunately, I printed it out, but it didn't print out in full. But what's your question?
So 4.7 is concept plan. And it states the township stipulates that Roosevelt property site is suitable for development. Does that incorporate 3.5, which says that the developer still has to meet the requirements for engineering and stormwater management? I know this is signed, or the agreement is signed, but can we change the resolution, or tell me if we need to state on 4.7, notwithstanding 3.5, meaning we're saying it's suitable, but we don't know because it hasn't met DEP requirements or engineering requirements.
We're obligated to put in that it's suitable. That was the agreement with not only this, but all of the COA matters. And again, Nancy can help me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's wrong. And ultimately, the detailed engineering plans still have to satisfy engineering and DEP, you know, whomever, whatever outside agencies that they can develop this. Just understand, and we've said this before, so I'll say it, but I'll say it again because I like to hear it. When this all started out with this particular site, I believe, actually, somebody, maybe Tom or Dave said that at one point they wanted 150 units. That was before my time. But as it related to this particular project, I think when we started, they were either at 72 or 68 or 62 units. And we were at 20 units. And then it went from that number to, they would go to, I think, down to 50 something, and then it got to 48, and we stayed and held it 20 units. Eventually, they got down to from 48 to 42, and then to 32 units was the last number. And that's when the master came in and basically wanted us to get to 28 units. We ended up not getting to 28 units, and right now we have, from 20 where we started, we have 20 units, and then they're also going to be paying for 3 units off-site. So, you know, frankly, in terms of the engineering and the overall layout, that was what we felt they could reasonably put on the site. But they still have to meet more detailed engineering issues that may be presented at the planning board or by outside agencies. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes and no, as usual. So not the no
Well,
part, but it's mixed. So Mary Beth, so the question is, can the developer hold that against us in the sense that we're saying it's suitable, but DEP says it's not? Not hearing you, Mary Beth. I see. No. I can read your lips, though.
Well, Mary Beth, since we can't hear you, would you really be saying that we can, if the DEP says it's not proper, they can't hold it against us? Would be my simple answer. That's up to the DEP. We don't control them. You know, we would probably have to have some alternate source for these units, but the DEP can't, we don't control them. If they say it's not suitable, then that's going to be the answer to that question.
So
And
again,
do you want me to chime in a little bit since we can't get Mary Beth? So based on what we know as far as DEP mapping and things like that, the property where they're developing is suitable. It's in the proper planning area. It's not being built on the environmentally constrained areas. Those are the types of that satisfies the suitable definition for COA, for affordable housing. If that, does that help?
yes. So and I know this question was brought up before. So if DEP says, okay, we're expecting it to be 2 point whatever acres for development, and DEP says, well, the floodplain has actually been extended. I'm making this up, and it's 1.75. So when we say it again, we say it's suitable. They're looking for 23 units. Then what happens?
Well, based on based on whatever DEP says or stormwater management or whoever, they will have to revise the plan, and we might have to amend our agreement with them because it's not suitable for what, you know, ultimately what they want to build. Does that make sense?
They've also supplied us with their plan. Again, it's one page, but it shows the units going on to the 2-point-something acres. If DEP were to turn around and say, no, we've extended the floodplain, and as a result, you know, now you only have, you know, 1.5 acres, whatever, that would change everything, and they'd have to change their plan and reduce the number of units. And we wouldn't be held, I don't believe, to saying, oh, now you get 22 units on 1.5 acres. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with that from our perspective.
That was the answer I was looking for, Marty. The fact that if the density wouldn't increase if the acreage does.
Right. If the acreage were to decrease, the intensity would also, the number of units would decrease as well.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
I'm backing Ron. You guys have more power than you realize in the current situation. There's no reason to improve this application tonight. Kick it out to another month and see what happens. There's
Okay,
no
Pete,
pressure.
I'm glad you feel that. I'm glad you feel that way. Of course, you haven't sat in court for the last 7 years dealing with this, but okay, I appreciate it.
Well, I've been in court with you for the last 3 years. I get it.
Right.
This is not business as usual. I'm telling you, like, pass it to next month.
Mayor. Mayor, are you still there?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor,
these short naps are wonderful.
yeah, I don't know where Mr. Mayor went. Mayor,
Can anyone hear me? This is Jack Kearns.
yes.
Can you hear me, Vinny?
Yeah, 1 minute. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to know if my mic was working.
Yes, but please mute yourself unless you're going to ask a question. Mr. Brockle does have a question.
Hey, Vinny, I'm good. It was on stormwater and Rob nailed it. So thank you, Rob.
Okay.
Thanks for the text, Don.
Vinny, I have a question if I can be recognized.
I don't know who this is.
Tom Kreitler, 304 Roosevelt.
Okay.
So to the professionals, the developers agreement under Article 5.1, and I think it's 5.2, talks about 5.1 talks about the obligation to process Roosevelt's development application with reasonable diligence, and 5.2 talks about the obligations to refrain from imposing cost generative requirements. I'd like to understand why those two elements are included in the agreement, what Roosevelt is seeking to avoid by having those. And secondly, could you address what elements of this plan will be addressed by the planning board? And we will have the opportunity to comment on that because, this ordinance is unusual in that it's so specific with respect to a lot of issues that typically would be part of a planning board application. But because of the situation we find ourselves in with COA, there's a lot of specificity in the ordinance that you're voting on this evening. So I want to understand what role the planning board is essentially going to play in this, and what influence we may have in that process in terms of the building design and lighting and noise and security and landscaping and all those sorts of things.
Well, I'm not sure if you want me to answer that or Nancy. Mary Beth seems to be muted, but the bottom line here is that language that you refer to. We've done about, I don't know, 3 or 4 of these on this particular for Ocean Township, but Nancy and Jeff Serenian's office and Mary Beth Lonigan, have done a lot of these matters for many different towns. And it's my understanding that language that you're referring to, which, could be considered troublesome, but that's in virtually every one of these types of resolutions that the developer, once, you go through this whole negotiating process before the court, and once they get to a resolution, they want that language gets put in there. Okay, it's not something we choose to have in there, but pretty much all the time that language gets put in. In terms of what the role of the planning board is, there's a lot of specificity, as you said, in the ordinance, but there are other things that aren't necessarily specified, and they review and make sure, they have an engineer review the planner reviews it and make sure it's going to work. I guess that's the best I can say, that they're going to be able to handle the water issues, the drainage, because those detailed plans have not been submitted prior to this settlement. So they have to submit those and make sure those work. Nancy or Mary Beth, if you can talk.
Sure. If Mary Beth, please feel free to interrupt me if you want. So cost generative requirements and expediting the planning board process has to do with the Mount Laurel cases themselves. It's because affordable housing is a constitutional obligation created by the Supreme Court of New Jersey, Supreme Court of New Jersey. What they were trying to do is not necessarily, they were trying to prevent planning boards from bogging down the process, which causes, expense, delay, things like that were not necessary. It's more that because this is a constitutional obligation that you're satisfying by creating affordable units, the planning board needs to move at a reasonable pace and ensure that the extra process, the extra features like Belgian block curbs, that was one that was actually specifically mentioned in one of the Mount Laurel decisions, things like that that are just an extra expense need to be eliminated because they are providing this benefit to the public by creating affordable units. So that was actually one thing that the Township of Mount Laurel was doing historically in order to prevent low and moderate income households from being able to afford units. So that's where that language comes from. It's a historical piece, part of the Mount Laurel doctrine itself. It's more just to ensure that extra costs are not heaped on a developer who's creating a benefit. Does that make sense?
I thought it made sense. And Mary Beth, to the extent we can't hear you, if you want, you can call in. And then maybe the phone number is on that list, 312-757-3121. And then you can call in and we could hear you. We're not hearing you.
Can you pick me up now, Marty? Can you hear me then?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on the question on the ordinance?
Yeah, I just want to be very clear. This is Peter Young, 610 Deal Road. I know there's been a lot of discussion back and forth about justifying COLA requirements and how complicated this all is. But I have to really weigh in with attended number 30 and say, I object to Ordinance 2334A. I see no reason why there's any urgency for you to pass this today. You can
It's a
easily
court
move
order,
this.
Peter. I don't think you're listening.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad you agree. We're under a court order. We were supposed to have done this. I can't remember originally when, but we've got to put off several times. And then we finally ended up with a drop dead date, which we've also missed. And now we are at this date, which the court told us to do a virtual meeting, pretty much the way we're doing it, and we should be able to pass this. And that will be upheld, and that's what you want.
I'm really uncomfortable with you passing this tonight.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to pay. This is Alan Challen from 253 Garfield, but just to clarify, it doesn't have to pass.
Who is it again? I'm sorry. Can you re-identify yourself?
This is Alan Challen from 253 Garfield Avenue.
Okay.
Just because you want it to pass doesn't mean, just to clarify, it doesn't have to pass in this meeting. That we could do it when times are a little bit more, when we're in a little more normal circumstances. It just doesn't, again, this concerns the whole neighborhood. It just doesn't concern the developer alone.
No question.
I live a block away, so we are concerned, and it matters to us.
I understand. I think what's happening, folks, is this COA is part of one of 4 of the Builders Remedy Acts that were taken against us. So lawsuits. This has been going on, COA, of course, since 2007 with us, and we've been really pushing it back and trying. And again, or personally, like you said, we don't want it. It's something that we have to cope with, and it's an obligation in New Jersey state law. It's involved. But we've been advertising, having these meetings, having public meetings. We've had over and over. I know now that we're having this meeting, and folks are coming in a little bit late, so it seems like we're rushing this. And I promise you, Mr. Kreitler, and they'll tell you, we're not rushing. We've been kicking this around a long time and trying to make lemonade out of lemons here. So it's not like we want it. It's something we have to deal with. We have an obligation. We negotiated, an extraordinary number down from an incredible amount that they wanted originally. And over the past 10, 12 years, we've gotten that number down significantly. So this is one of the pieces of the puzzles that we're trying to, and as our attorney, Mr. Arbus, stated, we're under court order to really move on this now. The judge is growing short and a little weary on us pushing this back and back. And, that's where we're at. I just didn't want you to think it's something we just threw out there and we're arbitrarily, let's just put this one through and why everybody's sleeping. That's not the case at all. I promise you that. And we appreciate your comments. We really do.
And as I said before, we actually didn't go to court because we were under the restrictions of COVID-19, but we had a telephone conference and I argued that we should wait and that this should await until we can have a regular meeting. And let us just say that the judge respectfully disagreed with that assessment and said, these things are done. They're being done all the time. They're going to be approved. And at this point, we don't know when that'll be that you'll have a regular meeting. And I want you to have this meeting to where we're doing it. So we're doing it.
So there was no other way to push this back or postpone, right, Marty?
No, I don't think we can postpone this anymore. But I will
But the
refer
only
to
other
Nancy.
the only
No.
other safety net now for these folks would be at the planning board.
That's correct.
Okay.
And again, and I know, look, no matter, I don't think it's lemonade, but I think it's a lot better than it could have been. And I think the people who are close by, while I'm sure they're not happy, the ones who are most directly involved realize I think we've done a lot to get those numbers reduced and put in a lot of effort on this. And it's been a very long time from when we first sat in the town hall and discussed this until now. And frankly, that time was, I think, fruitful, at least in terms of the numbers. Doesn't mean it makes anybody jumping for joy, but it's the best we could do.
I repeat, you're folding. Carry it to another month.
Thank you, Peter. We appreciate your efforts.
So, can I just ask, what would change? I got to ask, because if I was in a regular meeting, what's going to change in a month? The development agreement is already signed. What would you like changed?
Nothing's going to change in a month. You know that, Rob, and they know that. But time is on their side. Yes, it is.
The financials are probably going to change.
Well, that may be true. It may be financially not going to be worthwhile to build it.
Yeah, well, we
That's
don't
up
want a
to
project
somebody.
started that's never going to
more
get.
density.
We don't want a project started that's never going to get to completion. And we also need to talk about the fact that, yes, this is a decision that affects the entire dynamic of the neighborhood. And so it does matter. And I understand that a judge comes in with an order and a judge says that they should have a meeting, very well, but the judge didn't say that everyone should go ahead and approve in that meeting. That's out of the judge's boundaries. And so I'm just, again, it's very easy to say someone put a gun in my hand, but it's another thing to say he made me shoot it.
Okay. The judge is certainly not going to control your opinions on this, but it's the council that votes, number one. Number two, and there was a really good point, number two, but I already, so I'll forget it.
I know, it's a good thing that the council represents the people.
It's not as if this is going to be built tomorrow. Okay, so the economic times are changing. There are certainly some impact by the recent issues, but this thing still has to go before a planning board, and then after that, the developer has a period of time to develop it. So, it's not tomorrow that they're going to start digging the ground.
Marty, it's Jackie Wenzel, 610 Dale Road. The only thing, I guess, in support of the neighborhood surrounding this area, maybe you could have a special meeting like we had for the 32 acres where there's more of the neighbors can actually attend. This virtual meeting is a little difficult. We're not hearing the mayor all the time. He's in and out. I think maybe it sounds like it requires maybe a proper meeting with more public input. Because once it gets to the planning board, as I've experienced, everything is, well, it complies with the ordinance. Even though there were things that didn't comply, that just kind of never was, objected to, and the attorneys got involved. So I think you, as the town government, if you're supporting we the people, it might be better that the people actually have a chance, like we had at the corner, even to be more involved.
Well, we did. No one showed up except for the immediate neighbors.
I think the people who are directly involved have had some involvement in this. Probably not as much as they would have preferred, but more than a minimal amount. And I think they've been involved in it for, some of them for a pretty long period of time. And I think they recognize, hopefully, again, not happy, but recognize the efforts. And I think at this point, time to, I can't remember the word, but do something or get off the pot. So I think we're at that.
The only thing is I could speak on behalf of the people who live around there because I'm one of them. I live 2 blocks away. My brother lives 4 blocks away. We have a bunch of other family, friends, cousins, our neighbors. And I could say that we all, frankly, don't feel I feel as comfortable as maybe, you know, you portray it as the surroundings. Now, I understand everybody's trying their best to reach their objective, and I respect that. The only thing I think what was said before was a very good point, is that I've seen this happen in too many other townships. I've seen this happen in too many other boroughs, and it just doesn't feel right. Once it gets to the planning board phase, it's just one step too far. And at that point, everyone says, "Oh, well, you know, it was by design. It was already in there, so it was already approved." So and the snowball keeps rolling down the mountain. You know, Ocean Township, we run our township in such a way that we're so organized. You know, other townships look to us, they respect us, and this is just not the way things should be getting done. You know, it's a really, really big project. It affects the neighborhood. It affects us. You know, we're paying taxes through the nose. You know, I don't know how everyone else feels about this, but we love our township. And in that respect, we also want to defend it and make sure we're doing the right things. And by the way, if everyone thought this was the best idea and we loved it, and you guys were coming in and investing this money and developing a project that we all love, you would be hearing that. And frankly, that hasn't been the case. And again, I'm not saying that we have a right to shut down every single project or to say that things shouldn't come across, but they have to go through the appropriate channels and checks. And at this point, that doesn't feel like what's happening. And I'm sorry to say it, that really hurts.
Sir, in all due respect, that has happened. That has happened, sir. We've been dealing with this, like I said, the neighbors can't deny it, for a long time on Roosevelt. Giving in with a gun to our head would have been proven much more density. So what's to say, let's push this back to the next meeting, someone else, one of your neighbors who's never heard of this before, comes and says, wait a minute, you need to vet this out more, have another meeting next month. And it'll never end.
They have the right to do that. It is their home. It is their home.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And think we've exhausted this over and over again. I just feel being involved this long with this, I feel that's where we're at. And I do appreciate where you're coming from as neighbors. We really do.
How many letters easily move this to another council meeting a month from now?
Peter, we've heard you. I'm not here to say that anybody that lives there is happy with this. So don't misunderstand me. That's not what I said. And I've dealt with at least two of the people who are right there, and I know they're not happy. They'd rather not see this done. But I think they understand we've been doing this a long time and it's been a long effort, even if they're not happy with the end result. But given what we started with, it's a good result. And this is not the first co-op project. It's not the second. It's like the fourth. So this is the fourth time we've gone through this with other properties in town. So, and I think this is the last.
But I just don't see why we should be the ones to bear the burden of that, of those previous.
Somebody's bearing. Okay.
Yeah, and again, why should it be the people?
Because that property owner filed a lawsuit seeking to develop this property and to put 60 some odd units or 80, whatever the number was initially, onto the property. That's why you're bearing the burden of it, because he filed the builder's remedy lawsuit. He was represented by competent counsel, and they fought on this issue for, again, however many years.
Find me one other property that has 80 units in our area. It's not there.
Well, there's not 80 units. There's 22 units.
I know. I'm saying, but you're talking about these larger. I'm just saying, even 20 units. It's not there because this is
96 units.
Well, right next to it's Poplar Village. Yeah, you're right next to Poplar Village.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Okay, if I took my lot tomorrow and said I want to build 8 units there, we should all be able to just start this process again?
No.
Or say that if I hang around the meetings for 7 years and go through the motions for 7 years, after that, if a judge puts a court order, then everyone should just approve it.
Alan, if you had filed a lawsuit under COA when this all started, I mean, I don't know how big your property is. I don't know what the answer is. This is the lawsuit that's been pending for years and years and years under COA, one of several. And this is the way ultimately it got.
My property is not big enough for 8 units, and this property is not big enough for 20. And that's how we feel, at least.
Correct. I agree.
Doesn't pay off.
However,
I understand your point. But now it's up, unless anyone else wants to be heard, it's up to the council.
Anybody else on 2334A?
Yep.
Mayor, I have no other questions.
David Dorf.
Yeah, 306
Dave?
Roosevelt Ave.
Okay.
The only, in the emails we were discussing today is the vacant house that is still on the property.
Yes.
And, everybody pitched in today in an email chain saying that you can't force anything right now, but at least code enforcement will be going out there and try to do something with the house because it's been vacant or abandoned for probably, Tom might even know better than me, at least 10 years.
Yeah, I know, Dave. Yeah, I think Ron responded to you, and I would ask Nancy in conversations with council whether or not you can get some commitment from him, unrelated to this, but a commitment to, if he's demolishing that house, get it demolished or fix it up or do something, because that's been an eyesore apparently for quite some time. But if not, then we'll have our code enforcement go and deal with it.
I think once we approve the agreement, we have every right to go in and move with code enforcement and give him the usual notices. And then if he doesn't do it, we do it ourselves and put a lien on the property. I don't see why we can't do that.
Well, we have to get code enforcement in there to see what violations there are, and then make a determination, and then we see where we go from there.
Condemn.
Mr. Mayor, Tom Kreitner again, 304 Roosevelt. My question about this home is, I was happy to hear, the quick solution of we'll send code enforcement in, but it's been like this for a decade. How come code enforcement has not been in there yet? I mean, you can see it by a drive-by.
I guess because we were negotiating the deal with them and we never took action until we actually got to a resolution. I presume that's the only reason, Tom.
Tom, can I ask a question? And I don't know, were there complaints made to the town about the property?
Yes.
I could check on that. There could be issues where they had open permits, and we run into a problem sometimes where by state law, as long as they do something at least once in a year period, they're allowed to. I don't know for sure. I can check on that and let you know.
Okay. One of the things with that, that whole house there's no back of the house. It's just particle board nailed to the back of the house. So it's like a movie set. You see the front of the house, but there's no back of the house.
This is Steve Felton from Roosevelt Avenue also. There's also a pile of wood 20 feet high there. They run a wood cutting business, which I've sent emails to the town about, and nobody's done anything. All it takes is a "Hey Bubba, watch this" moment, and they throw a match on it, and Mr. Kreitler's house will go up in flames. And I guess attendee number 30's house would go up in flames. So yeah, that whole property's been a eyesore for us for such a long time, and now you're just digging in deeper with us. That's all. So to say we haven't said anything would be ludicrous, and if I have to go back and Tom and everybody else for 7, 8, 9-year-old emails, I guess we could do it. But yeah.
I didn't say anything. I just asked. I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
It's just that you guys never complain. I have no idea because I'm not in code enforcement. I just asked the question because that's typically the response.
But again, like has been said, what does it take for code enforcement to do something? Does that pile of wood have to go up? Do they have a business license for that property? No, they don't. I've checked on that. Yet they're running a wood business out of that property, which is not a residential use. And I use this in freehold as an argument to reduce my taxes. The town's allowing a business to be run without a license 2 doors from my house. So
I will have it addressed first thing in the morning.
Be good. The wood pile and the house.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on 2334A?
Nothing, Mayor.
Yeah, that's what I said. Don't pass it.
Okay, thank you. Someone make a motion to close the public hearing on 2334A.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 2334A.
Second?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Councilmembers Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, action please on ordinance 2334A.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 23. Sorry, what was it?
2334A.
2334A and publish according to law.
I'll second.
Second?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitano.
Yes.
Councilmembers Achara,
Listen, I agree with the people that have been complaining about this development, but as our attorneys have said and the mayor has said, I think this is the best of the worst that we can come up with. I am voting yes, but I understand that we do have challenges here, and hopefully the planning board will address whatever the residents are looking for locally. So yes.
Councilmember Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Mayor Siciliano.
And yes, and I echo what Councilman Achara just said. Same thing. We're hoping to really make this as easy as possible for the neighbors and get that property cleaned up. Okay, so 2334A has been approved. Let's circle back to Resolution 2058, please, if we may, since it's germane to this. So we've talked about that. So have a motion to, well, let's have a vote on 2058 and get that done as well. Someone offer?
I'll offer.
Second?
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Councilmembers Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. All right, next up, ordinance number 2335. Vin, could you read the title, please?
An ordinance of the Township of Ocean County of Monmouth authorizing the private sale of non-conforming real property known as Block 25.05, Lot 5, to a contiguous property owner.
Okay. Will you please open the public hearing on 2335?
We cannot understand what Vinny was explaining. Could you give us an executive summary?
He just
Hold on.
read the title. That's all.
You need a motion to open the public hearing, Mayor.
I'll make a
We don't
motion.
Let's get the public hearing open.
Address.
Okay, the public hearing open, then you can answer that question. Someone, please?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 2335.
Thank you.
Second. Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Councilmembers Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, so at this time, if you have any questions on 2335, now's the time. State your name and address for the record, please.
610 Deal Road, Jackie Wenzel. Can you just explain the property? I'm not familiar with it.
Would you like me to explain better?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
This is a piece of property, 40 by 100 on Chatham Avenue between two homes. We had a request from one of the property owners to purchase it. Legally, we have to offer it for sale to the two contiguous property owners. It's a vacant piece of land. We have it on the books from the assessor for $34,400. So there would be an auction that's the price it would start at.
Okay.
Two property owners, they're not interested in purchasing it right now?
We'll find out.
Okay, and is it, again, I'm not familiar with it, is it possibly something that we could purchase with our open space fund and keep it more wooded instead of developing it?
We're already doing that. What happens is it's old neighborhood over there, Jackie, and sometimes those are non-conforming lots the neighbors might have next door. And so if they want to put a deck on, or if they want to enhance their property or replace their porch, they'll have to go for a variance. This prevents them from having to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to subdivide or do anything, but it gives them the option to make a property improvement, which we'd like to see, without having to go through a planning board or zoning board rather approval. So oftentimes they'll ask if they could purchase a property. And we allow that in circumstances where we know it's absolutely safe. It's not going to add anything else to the town as far as density or things like that. And this situation checks that box.
So the two properties on each side of this property will have an opportunity to each buy half of it? To expand
Half or
their own
all, yeah.
property? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And were there
That's
any
correct.
public utilities, or I just wanted to make sure there's no public utilities or poles or anything. There's no work the town would have to do around that, right? It's just an empty lot.
No. Typically when we sell these lots, it's a as is, where is, and you're responsible for anything as far as improvements go on the property.
Awesome. Thank you.
In addition, it can't be developed independently. It has to be developed as part of, that's why it's the neighboring owners. It becomes part of the neighboring lot, one or the other, or maybe both. But the bottom line is that it can't be used independently or made part of a subdivision. So that's the other restriction on it.
I have one more question on that. So what if neither has the budget right now to make that purchase? Could the township then just purchase it and keep it, just leave it?
We already own it. Jackie, we already own it. It'll stay on our Rossi. It'll stay on our property roll. All right. They've expressed an interest, so this is why we do this.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Anybody else? No? All right. So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 2335.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 2335.
Second?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council Members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. Action, please, on ordinance 2335.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance 2335 and publish according to law.
Second?
Second.
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council Members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, that ordinance has been approved. And next up, ordinance 2336. Vin, would you read the title, please?
An ordinance of the Township of Ocean authorizing the private sale of non-conforming real property known as Block 140.17, Lot 2, to a contiguous property owner.
Okay, similar situations. Someone please open the public hearing on ordinance 2336.
I make a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 2336.
Thank you.
Second.
Second?
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council Members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. Anybody wishing to be heard on 2336, please state your name and address for the record.
Peter Young, 610 Deal Road. I appreciate the block and lot numbers. Could you give me the street address if I want to Google it?
Sure.
Mike? Sure. It's on Belmont Avenue by the Asbury Circle. It's a small 25 by 100 piece of property. It's a sliver between two properties. We have our minimum bid set at $7,500. So that's where you can look it up. It's right by the Asbury Circle on Belmont.
I'm going to buy it.
Okay. Well, you're
It's
not a
only-
contiguous property owner, so if this doesn't go through, you can talk to us about it. Okay?
And just a question, I was just wondering, would a contiguous property owner also be someone who's behind? Just curiosity, or it's only the side
Any
neighbors?
portion, yeah, Alan, any portion that it touches. So if it touches your back property line, your side, the
Got
corner
it.
of your
So
property.
interesting.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
Do you get little slivers of property that come up for sale every once in a while?
No, only if somebody, again, has a non-conforming lot and they wish to make it their lot a conforming lot. If they're an R4 zone and they're 80 by 100 and they need to be 100 by 100, and this will help them if they want to, put the deck in or make an improvement to their porch or anything like that. So this helps folks out. And it helps us out because they make an improvement that we'd like to see as well.
Got it, approved.
And they will pay taxes. Will we get more tax money in? Because now they're paying taxes on that new lot?
Yes, it comes on the tax roll.
That's
Correct.
great.
Yep. We have a lot of properties like that. We own 875 acres of town, but we do not put them out for bid only in these circumstances where folks, it will help somebody. But typically we keep the property that we have. Anybody else wishing to be heard? If not, make a motion to close the public hearing on 2336.
I make a motion to close the public hearing on 2336.
Second?
Second?
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Mayor Siciliano.
Yes. Action please on 2336.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2336 and publish according to law.
Second?
Second?
Deputy Mayor Napolitani,
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Donlin,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
and Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, that ordinance has been approved. At this time, we're going to open it up to general questions, anything germane to the township business. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Dennis
Name?
Howlett. I live on Holbrook Street in Ocean Township.
Okay.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, Dennis, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to know if there's a list, somebody has a list in town of all the properties that have been offered a buyout by the Blue Acres program that happened after Sandy or around that time. A list of all the properties, not the ones that just accepted it, but of all the properties that were offered.
Yes, we do. You can check in with our construction, or I'm sorry, community development tomorrow. I'm sure Mr. Kirk can put that together for you. But I'll tell you, it was two areas that we had made the offer because I was involved in both.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much Brookside Avenue all the way up to number 408 or Monmouth Road, right on up. Every property there had the offer. And then also we tried it again back there on the Whale Pond Brook, but did not get enough, unfortunately, for that. But we have that for you.
Okay, I'll check in with Ron tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, Dennis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Eli Shalom at 229 Lawrence Avenue. I have a few questions.
Sure, Eli.
Let me know also if I'm not loud enough. I can get closer to the microphone.
You're good.
Okay, great. So this is, I guess this question is mainly for Mayor Siciliano. With respect to the restrictions on summer rentals, I'm curious, what are the metrics, or what has to happen? What is the township looking to see in order to either rescind those restrictions, or what? I know the date was given as May 15 to reconsider, but what has to happen by that point in terms of the development of this virus and contagion and infection before in order to change that?
Outstanding question, Eli, and I'm going to tell you what we're looking at. We are looking at a metric here of if our curve is flattening out enough that we feel confident that bringing in more folks. Again, you have to understand.
Can someone go on mute?
Yeah, we're going to echo here.
Hold on for a minute, Mayor.
So we have. You good now?
Yeah.
Yep,
is that better?
Yep, much better.
So we have up to 400 potential summer rentals each year, which, that's not just single people, that's a family. And we understand these folks aren't coming from the next town over. They're coming probably New York, Pennsylvania, Philly, the surrounding metro area, which is the hotbed of not the country, the world. And so we're really trying to eliminate our exposure as much as possible. We're doing really good. I mean, everybody here right now, I'm going to show a chart tomorrow that shows us with a pretty good angle, but we had a little surge today, which, it causes you to concern a little bit. So if we see this going to the 75-degree angle or curve flattening out, we're going to reopen that, revisit our summer rental law. We'll see how we're doing. listen, I don't want to hurt anybody, and I think a lot of people rely on the income here. I mean, we get that. I mean, I'm in real estate for 33 years. But, you know, we're trying to save lives and keep people safe. People here have made tremendous sacrifices, keeping their kids in and foregoing a lot of privileges and things that they like to do. And it's working, and we want to continue to do that work. And so that was the thought of limiting the summer rental.
Understood.
Okay.
Sure. So I have two other questions that relate to this. One is with respect to, so if the restrictions are lifted on May 15th or in mid-May, obviously a lot of seasonal rentals at this point are going to be summer rentals starting end of May, early June. In terms of the process of people going out, getting their certificates of occupancy, having their inspections done, is there any plan in place if the restriction is lifted to prioritize rental leases that are starting earlier as opposed to later? So for example, if the restrictions are lifted May 15 and someone has a lease starting May 22nd, would they be able to get a certificate of occupancy even if someone else has, you know, with a lease starting June 10th has already started scheduling inspections, or is there some other system that would allow people, you know, because I obviously, like you said, some people are relying on that income. Is there any other plan to help people out in terms of if the restrictions are lifted to actually get tenants in there in the right time frame?
As you can imagine, we're going to be inundated once we lift the restriction, and it'll be on a first served basis. We won't do a look back on each application because, like I said, if we have 400 applications, it's hard for the staff to go through and say, wait a minute, this lease starts then. I would just explain to your prospective tenant, listen, this was under a moratorium. They just lifted it. We're probably not going to be able to give you a key for at least 2 to 3 weeks. And I think you'd have to go by that.
Right. Okay, understood. And then the last question, this might be more appropriate for Steve, maybe not. But in terms of property tax payments that are coming due, I guess in the next week or week and a half, is there any plan for any sort of relief on property tax payments, or is that sort of proceeding as scheduled, even when some people are faced with having to potentially give back rental deposits that they've already received?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I mean, here's the biggest problem. The collection of taxes is regulated by the state of New Jersey. They're the ones who give us the rules as to when we collect them, the amount or the maximum amount of interest that we can charge, when they go to tax sale, all of those things. So everything is promulgated by the state when it comes to tax collection. There's very little that's at the discretion of the township. Right now, the state has not given any kind of a grace period for the second quarter taxes. There was legislation that was passed, I think, by the Assembly, which gave the director of the Division of Local Government Services some authority on that, but that was only passed by the Assembly. There's no legislation like that on the Senate side. So that legislation essentially, it's kind of like a wish. The only thing that the town really can do as far as that goes would be the interest rate charged on delinquent taxes. However, that's a real bugaboo in itself. I've received a couple of notices from the New Jersey Tax Collector and Treasurers Association regarding that particular issue. Not only that, I've reached out to our vendor, Edmunds, who is the software provider for our tax collection system, and asked if changing the interest rate would be something that we would be able to do just so that we could collect and properly assess any interest charges to the residents for delinquent taxes. They have no way of handling this at this particular point in time. The other thing is that interest rate changes that the township would make would be proactive as a side instead of being prior to. So, for instance, if we said, okay, May 1st, we're going to make the interest rate 0% for delinquencies. It would be for any taxes that would become delinquent after May 1st. All the prior year or the prior delinquencies would still have to be calculated at the current rate, which is 18%. So those people who are currently delinquent wouldn't receive any kind of relief from this, and the people who are going forward would. And if we went and said, okay, we're going to change the interest rate to 0 for 2 months and then bring it back up to 18%. Well, the thing is that with the way the state law is, that the delinquencies that occur in that 2-month period would always be continue to be subject to the 0%. So it becomes, it looks like it's going to become quite a management nightmare to even try to address it, even though, you know, we really want to do something to help out the taxpayers. The other consideration is that the taxes that we have to pay to the school board and to the county, they're not going to give us any relief from us having to pay them. And so now you have a cash flow issue where we're supposed to, we're required to make that county tax payment, which is maybe $4 million on May 15th, whether we got the cash or not. We reserve, like I said before, for collected taxes. That $4 million is, you know, that's for collections, you know, on regular delinquencies. We don't have anything in place where we would be able to pay the $4 million to the county on the 15th and also pay the $6 million that's due to the school board. So those are all considerations that we have to take into effect. Now, in my estimation, the banks have already told us, you know, that they're going to be paying the second quarter taxes. As a matter of fact, we've already started to receive some of that. Taxes that we collect from the mortgage banks makes up roughly about 60% of the tax collections overall. And we also have a very healthy subscription to our direct withdrawal, which is about, let's see here, we've got 1,000 properties currently on that. So that's a little bit, probably about 11 or 12% in additional. So, you know, you've got a roughly 71% of our taxes coming from those two sources. You know, the rest of them are other minor banks and businesses and things on that line. The businesses have, of course, the CARES Act, which I believe was extended today to, you know, they had run out of money, but now they've got another $400 or $500 billion to spend on that. So businesses have the ability to apply for those small business loan grants and loans to help them cover operating expenses as a result of the shutdown to businesses due to this coronavirus. The second quarter, in my feeling, is that that's not the one to worry about. I think the third quarter is going to be the one that's going to be more impacted. You know, that's when we should really feel the sting from the economic slowdown. I'm hoping that the state can do something because what they would need to do is they would need to say, okay, we're going to extend the grace period out for that quarter's payment. In addition, the county and the schools won't receive their payments at that same time either. That would really be the way to do it, but I don't control them. They only tell me what to do. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that we can do.
Steve, Stephen, I think that's actually I think it's actually a really pertinent topic maybe to discuss, because, as we think about, and again, I happen to not be in this category, but as I do think about, the neighbors who have had to, who aren't able to now rent out their summer homes, and I understand the logic, and I don't necessarily disagree with it at all. I want to make sure that we keep our community safe. But what I do wonder is, they don't control that decision. Whoever that's enacted on, they don't control that decision, and to the extent they rely on the money that they get from their summer income to pay for their taxes and or mortgage, I understand that, of course, them not paying or anyone not paying creates a cash flow issue with the school payment of of 6 million, or our other payments of 4 million, and we have all these big payments. But I worry about I worry about our neighbors who are saying, well, hey, now I got my own cash flow issue because I have my home expecting always to rent it out every year. I couldn't imagine a world where I didn't. And, I pay taxes for that home because I get all these beautiful perks of living in the great area of Ocean Township. And now they're saying, well, hold on, I can't use my home the way I want it to, but I still got to pay the taxes. And so I guess I worry about that person. And if we're imposing the restriction on them, is there no way to impose some form of relief to that set of, I guess, 400 is what it sounded like. Sounds like a relatively small considering the overall size. Is there no relief or program we could put in place to make sure that they don't have trouble in these challenging times?
Well, that's what I had said was the problem is that tax policy for property taxation is promulgated with the state of New Jersey. We have very little discretion. When people call me up and say, well, I was late for paying taxes this one quarter. I've been here for, 40 years. I've never been late. Can you waive the interest on it? And the answer is I really can't. I don't have it in my authority to waive that interest. The state of New Jersey tells me how I'm supposed to collect the taxes and how I'm supposed to run the tax office. There's, like I said, very little discretion.
Steve, I think I fully understand that. I guess the only thing that gets me is we think about, the state of New Jersey didn't force us to enact. And again, I do think we should enact. We should keep in place the concept that maybe a summer rental shouldn't come until things are better, and May 15th might be that date. And if it is, then we should definitely lift it up. But but we took that on as our choice to say our community, we have about 400 homes who rely on this, and sorry, you're not gonna be able to do it this year as of right now. And I guess the part that gets me is that person who now can't pay the taxes, whether or not they could pay the interest, those 400 people, now those are 400 homes who potentially can't pay their mortgage and now foreclose on their mortgage. And now we have 400 homes that are potentially out there, people who can't pay, and now who wants all these foreclosures happening also. So I'm just walking down the line of, I understand that our hands might be a little tied right now, but we may need to spend a little time trying to find a solution if we're putting in place programs that create these kinds of issues.
No,
let me hold on one second. Let me just correct, not really correct, but a little footnote. The decision on the summer rentals, and not that it was forced upon us, but the governor.
I understand that it was granted. It was a granted right that everyone can do it if they want to.
Right. All the shore communities, and frankly, my understanding is virtually all the shore communities have done that.
No, it's not all. It's not all.
I didn't say all.
I'm just saying, I know for a fact it's not all. So just.
No, I'm not saying it's all. I said virtually all. But the bottom line also is, obviously what's going on now is hurting a lot of people. It's hurting the people who can't rent for the summer. It's hurting people who can't work. I mean, who can't pay their mortgage because they can't work. Obviously, something's going to have to happen at some point to try to resolve that. It's just, at this point, beyond us. But maybe at some point that'll be done by the state, and we'll deal with this issue as well. But I don't know.
Yeah, I just wish someone would. I wish the answer could be that we would focus on something that we could do to actually provide them relief. And the reason why I say that is because we are imposing the problem, and the same way. I'm sorry, I think there's an echo. Somebody's off mute. But I think the same way that they are biting the bullet, okay, and not renting out their homes to protect us, we need to bite the bullet and figure out a way to protect them too. These are our neighbors. They do pay their fair share of taxes. And if they're paying their taxes, I want to make sure that they're being protected. And so I'm just saying, maybe we need a workshop. Maybe we need something to come up with a plan. I understand right now our hands might be tied. It's not that I don't hear that. It's just that I can't imagine how we could impose something because we think it's going to be a bugaboo for us, but we're not worried about the bugaboo for the person at the end of the line. That's our township. That's who we're here to represent. So I just want to make sure that that's being thought of. And I know, again, I do not want to undercut the efforts of our awesome committee. You guys are on fire. We appreciate everything you do. I don't know any town that's as lucky to have people who are as dedicated to their jobs as you. And we know how much you care. I just wanted to flag it because maybe those people aren't the ones who have the loudest voices in the room, but they are most likely the ones who are suffering right now. And I worry about that.
Well, we appreciate that, and I hear what you're saying. And I just want to say that the summer rental's not totally dead. That's why we're doing a 30-day review. Hopefully these folks might get something out of it. But we're just cautious about, is that helping flattening the curve, or will that create a spike? So something we're going to review, prior to the 15th, the council, and make a decision. Maybe we have to go one more month and folks can get something out of it. We don't want to hurt them. We really don't. And I hear what you're saying as far as your text. It's horrible.
I'm going to go to Stephen Gallagher's YouTube channel.
I just wanted to come back and say thanks a lot. This is Eli again. I appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions, Steve especially. That was a really comprehensive answer, and I'm grateful for the walkthrough. Thanks a lot, y'all.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Hey, Alan, Dave Dorfman. Hey, Alan, in regards to the seasonal rentals, I started doing this back in 1985. The three-family house on Roosevelt Avenue, and there really weren't that many back then. So as more and more people start buying houses around here, for argument's sake, the rates came down dramatically over the past 3 or 4 years. So I've been doing year-round rentals now probably for 15 years at least. It makes a big difference. If you do have a summer rental, you have to go to your bank or go to the SBA, apply for an economic disaster recovery loan. I did that in Florida. I have a 3-family Airbnb down there. I got shut down March 16th. Okay, and right now I'm vacant. I have 3 units. I'm paying my taxes, and it's my decision to buy that house. But I went to my bank in Florida, and they're waiving only the principal, but not the interest and taxes. Same thing with Manasquan Bank. Same thing with Kearney Bank. Same thing with Amboy Bank. So if somebody does have a summer rental, or they're depending on an income and they can't pay their mortgage, they have to call their bank and get a letter signed from the bank and at least delay for 90 days. That's what I did.
Great stuff, Dave. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I hope that people would be able to do it. I know it's each circumstance might be a little bit different, but I'm happy to hear it work for everyone. I also hope it'll work for everyone else. I just want our neighbors. I want our neighbors to be okay, and also I don't want anyone to ever not want to purchase a home in here because they're going to say, well, if I buy a house in New Jersey, maybe one day I can't rent it if I need that income. And these are all just things that again, I know you guys worry about, and I know people understand the situation today. It's just a question of when the uncertainty comes, how do we protect the little guy? And that's the only thing I was flagging.
All right, good stuff.
You can't go buying, like Chris, I'm in real estate too for 20 years license, and you can't just go buy a house just for the sake of thinking you're going to collect the money on it. It's an ugly situation for everybody.
Right. Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, these are extraordinary
and-
circumstances, right? So I was going to say.
Yeah. Anybody else?
But I do,
Public.
yes, Mayor,
Margie?
I have a couple questions. Oh, go ahead, Margie. Someone else.
No, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Getting back to the environmental resource inventory, Mayor, when are we going to adopt that into the master plan? Do we have a date for that yet?
When we start our new master plan, we're hiring a company to, I believe, right, Mike, help us review and revise and put together, and then at that time, that can be incorporated into it. So we were looking for 2021. Hopefully, we're still on target for that, Mike.
Correct. We were going to start around October.
Okay, and then have it in place probably for the 2021 year, Marge.
Will you be working, looking at the governor's new energy plan as you're putting together the new master plan? Are you going to be adopting any of the?
Yeah, just to understand, Jackie, the master plan is in the
That's
control.
Margie, I believe.
No, it's
Jackie.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, the master plan is in the control of the planning board. They're the ones who dictate the master plan, the amendments to the master plan, not the council. So the master plan is the one who will review that primarily.
So they will also be the ones that will sit with the environmental resource inventory?
Well, they will have that, yes.
So when will we have a meeting? I mean, when does that happen? Do you know?
I think the mayor just said we're going to start.
He didn't have anything to do with it.
The manager said, I think in October. Well, I guess we've hired somebody else as well to get involved in it, but in October of 2020, with passage sometime in 2021.
But will we be able
Correct.
to, will it be open to the public? Is it going to be something
Yes,
that we?
yeah, yes, Jackie, we'll have an open public meeting before we do the new master plan, absolutely.
Okay.
Right, and when we say we, when we say we, I think we're talking about the planning board. But the bottom line is that every amendment to the master plan had prior to that a hearing regarding the master plan and any amendments to it. So that will continue.
Well, we were hoping to not have such a cut and paste kind of what's going on. You know, if we had something more organized, it would be, I think it'd be better thought out especially the importance of the environmental resource inventory, because we have, as we've spoken many times, have become an urban community when many of us that bought here looked at, believed we were living in a suburban community. To me, it looked like the country, coming from New York. And so the absence of trees over the last 10 years has been really significant.
Well, I think Mayor Chris is going to have a special committee for the master plan, and he's going to put me on it and you on it.
You're welcome to be on it. Like I said, we're going to really do that in conjunction with our advisory board will be the environmental commission, of course, and you have a liaison from the council on that. Not to lay it all on Councilwoman Donlin, but she is our liaison. And believe me, she's not going to let us off the hook on missing anything. I promise you that. That's why she's there. But again, I'll say, let me say this, folks. You can, I want you guys to Google Earth Ocean Township in June. And I'm going to tell you, you probably won't even see your house with the tree canopy. So I differ on you saying that we're anything but a suburban community. You know what I mean?
Well, that was Rutgers. It has to do with the impervious ground cover, the loss of mature trees.
I get it. We have 38% tree coverage still, so we're pretty heavily wooded here. We are a bucolic community compared to New York. I promise you that.
We want to hold on to what's left, and we want to have, as we've talked about before, in terms of the corner.
Same here.
Minimal amount of trees. The last.
Do we know what that number is without Joe Pelaya? The 38% coverage?
Here's what we have, folks. Ocean Township is 7,700 acres. Okay, so we have about 2,400 acres of treed area. I mean, we have a lot. So, and plus each individual development, so you go Wayside Woods, Deal Woods, etc. Like I said, look at that at Google Earth in the summertime. They have trees on their property and in and around their area. You won't see these homes. Councilman Fisher and Napolitani will not find their homes on Google Earth in the summertime from a aerial view. I promise you that.
But do we own that land as a
Three
town?
solar companies turned me down already because of how many trees I have out here.
Yeah, he can't get satellite.
I can't get solar out here.
But what I'm asking is, what does the town own? That means it's protected because, Deputy Mayor,
837 acres.
300, how many?
837 acres.
We own 12%. We own 12% of the town, which is probably one of the most in Monmouth County, other than the farm areas of Millstone, Freehold, where they had 1,000-acre farms. We never had that. We had 100-acre farms.
So you already own that. So the land that we could
We own
purchase.
12%.
So we own 12% of 137 acres?
No, we own 12% of 7,700.
Okay. So I have a question. The land, the woodland that's behind the homes on Roosevelt Avenue, that woodland that backs up to the Hollywood Golf Course.
Can't be developed. Cannot be developed.
Protected because it's wetlands, correct?
It's wetlands and there's buffering, and the Hollywood Golf Course has they own up to the brook. They can't go any further anyway. It's a golf course. They wouldn't want to. So no. And then coming from Roosevelt you couldn't. It's a precipice. You couldn't build anything on there if you dreamt about it. We can't even put a sidewalk there. It's so difficult.
I have a dream house over there, and it's not for sale yet, but when it comes for sale, I just would want to make sure the backyard doesn't get plowed down at some point.
Be a beautiful place to live, Jackie.
And I have, so I guess one more question is, if I come down to Town Hall, is there a map that I can look at all the land that
Not
we
yet.
own?
There is, but we're closed to the public because we're trying to flatten out our curve here. But yes, there'll be a time when you can come in and we can gather. Just give us a little notice because, it's a very active department or development department down there, community development. So you need to give us notice. Hey, I'd like to come in next Friday, and then Ron can put it together for you. How's that?
There's not just one map that shows all the green on the township that's ours?
No, I worked on a map like that with Jacob in our tax assessor. So it's something we have to dig out and put back together for you. So we need a little notice, and we'll get it out for you.
I think everyone would be interesting because, again, like with the governor's.
I think I put it up online. I've shared it before on Facebook and online, but I can pull it out.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
I had one more quick question about curbs.
When you ask a question, could you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the name comes up when I talk. This is Alan Shalom again.
Okay.
Hey, Alan.
Hi, how you doing? So I just wanted to ask, this one was just about, I've been meaning to ask this for a long time. How does if we don't have curbs on our street and there's a lot of flooding, there's no sidewalks, we are in a really residential part of the town though. I was just wondering, and when I say flooding, I'm sorry, I don't mean brook type flooding. I just mean that I think there's a lot of water. I don't know if there's pumps under the ground or something that's pushing water to the curbs, but how would you go about requesting, or is that something we could do to request to have a curb? Even if, I'd love to ask for sidewalk, but I'm not that, I just feel like that's a big stretch, but just to have a curb or something, what is the process there?
Let me explain it to you, Alan. You ready?
Thank you.
Just back to what Jackie said, we were built and developed as a bucolic community. And the thought was not to have curbs and sidewalks, to have the grass kind of gently roll into the street, and that absorbs a lot of the water, etc. That was really the intent. As time went on, we had more developments. We needed safety areas for folks to walk so they're not in the middle of the street. So development we required them to put in the sidewalks and the curbs. So we don't put them in unless it's a development or an area already has it. However, you yourself as a homeowner, if you want to channel water run into a inlet by you can put a curb in yourself. So you got to understand that we're not responsible for it. If the snowplows get it, it's not something that we can help you with. So you kind of travel at your own risk. As far as sidewalks, when we pave, we do an assessment district and we ask folks if they want their existing sidewalks replaced. You pay for the sidewalks. We now pay for the curbing. However, like I said, we're probably not going to put them in areas that don't have them unless you're near a school, we need a safe walk program, and usually we'll apply for a grant for that as well.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Ben?
Nothing, Mayor.
All right, someone make a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
To adjourn.
Meeting.
Adjourn.
You're closing your meeting. You're adjourning the meeting.
We're adjourning, yeah, it's a motion to adjourn.
But I had a question I thought you were going to ask.
Who's that?
Jerry and Brenda, Beechwood Avenue, about the
Okay.
homes for sale. Are there any township restrictions on showing homes? And if so, what are they? Also,
No, there's still, I think the state guideline was you can still show homes, one person in the house at a time. You show it to one prospective client. People are willing to do that, and real estate can continue.
with the township offices closed, how does the CO work for a sale of a home and a new owner?
So we're still accepting applications for COs. So you'll call up or you can do an online application. And a lot of, like we're doing with the fire inspections, are pretty much FaceTime. And we're trying to get inspectors out when we can. But a lot of our guys, believe it or not, were exposed in both our construction department and our housing department. Not that anybody came down with anything, but they ran the risk of being with people who had the virus. So we're kind of a little cautious about that right now. But yes, we're still accepting applications. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, adjourn. Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Deputy Mayor Napolitani.
Yes.
Council members Achara,
Yes.
Conlon,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Mayor Siciliano.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Meeting's adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Be safe, everybody.
Good night.